Okay, cool.
All right. Let's go. We're on a little bit of a time crunch, hopefully not. But welcome. This is a steering committee meeting for the draft comprehensive plan. It says draft all over it for a reason. We know there's some little nitpicky stuff in there that we want to correct, but tonight we just want to do a broad overview with our consultant to talk through it and address any questions or concerns you guys may have. And with that, I'm going to introduce Josh and kick things off.
Okay, thanks, Nathan. Thank you all for being here again. As you know from last time, my name is Josh Kuntz. I'm with House of Levine, the urban planning firm tasked with assisting the city develop its new comprehensive plan. Also joined here by Jack Carso, planner 2 with House of Levine, and Katie is a planner with House of Levine as well. We've been the core 3 in the project, start to finish. We've also had, based on some of the specific needs of your community, we've had some other people plug in our office, but I'm happy to say that we've had a consistent team that kicked this off and is here at the finish, so I think the document shows that. This says draft plan orientation. It really could say draft plan review and discussion as well, which is what we're going to be doing here. So I want to take you through just a little bit of a recap and project progress, and then Jack is actually going to walk us through at a pretty high level the different chapters, what you're seeing in here, some of the big ideas that are in each chapter with, of course, opportunity for feedback, input, and discussion. I'll reiterate something that Nathan just said, is that this is a draft. It is still, it's starting to look really polished. It's starting to look finished. You have an actual book in front of you, probably some of you do. But we are still seeking this group's feedback and input. We have an open house immediately following this, so we're going to be asking for community feedback and input, and this is absolutely still something that we would anticipate refining based on what we hear in this room and based on what we hear from the community tonight. So it might look done, but none of this is set in stone, and we still have opportunity to revise and make sure that it's exactly the plan that Clemson needs before it goes into the adoption process. Normally I'd just reiterate introductions, but let's save that. Hopefully you all can stick around for the open house. And we've done introductions with this group before, but in the interest of time, I think we're going to get right into it. So first up, we've touched on this before with this group. So again, I think we are at a document here that is starting to do some of these things that we've discussed as a working committee with you all. This document reflects engagement with the community. It identifies those desires, those needs, and aspirations. We did the assessment of existing issues, strengths, and it now guides a broad range of topics at a policy level. And specifically, and I know this is a little bit of a recap from last time, your comprehensive plan is your should statements. What should the city be doing if it wants to realize this vision? What are the things we should do? You're going to see a lot of that. The city should, the city should, the city should. Their recommendation, law, and that's how you implement some of your comprehensive plan. Other recommendations are going to be implemented through partnerships, through the CIP, things like that. So again, this is a policy guide. And then this is a dynamic document, and it's dynamic in that it can be updated later on down the line. If something were to happen that isn't anticipated in this document in 2 years, you can update it. It can be updated through small area plans, through sub-area plans, through additional studies like a parking study or a stormwater study. And it's a dynamic document in that you'll see it also incorporates a lot of your previous plans and studies. So it's not a standalone, wipe the slate clean, everything that we did before is gone, and now this is your new plan. It incorporates that, those other plans and studies, and also regional plans and studies. We've had a good program of community outreach. Again, we have another opportunity for outreach and engagement tonight with the public, and I know that staff is considering some other opportunities to get the plan and the word out in these final stages here as well. One thing I want to point you to is the South Carolina Comprehensive Planning Enabling Act. So this is the state statute that governs comprehensive planning at the municipal level in the state of South Carolina. The basic planning process for all comprehensive plans, it has to include that inventory of existing conditions, which is that existing conditions memorandum that we reviewed with this group. A statement of your needs and goals. So this plan does include that. And you have a vision statement, you have a set of goals, and you have an implementation strategy. We will, following this final round of input and public and committee input, we will put together an action matrix that will have those timeframes as well. South Carolina, I will say every state in the country has some planning enabling statutes. Some are very brief. Illinois, for example, where our home office is based, it basically says communities should have a comprehensive plan. And that's, in a nutshell, that's all that it says. And then if you're getting state level funding, there's some required elements. In South Carolina, it goes a little bit deeper, and you have some elements that are unique to your state that are required elements for a municipal comprehensive plan. So the population and demographics element, you have that. We established that in the existing conditions memorandum and carried it forward, key parts of that into the comprehensive plan document. Land use, housing, economic development, transportation, community facilities, those are pretty standard across the country. Natural resources. Resiliency is a relatively new element that's required in a comprehensive plan in the state of South Carolina. That's a requirement at the state level. Cultural resources is it's something that you see in some other states, but it's relatively unique. That's not required in every state that there be a cultural resources element to your municipal comprehensive plan. And then priority investment. Your state is a little more prescriptive about what that has to be called. So required elements doesn't necessarily mean required chapters. These have to be present in your plan in some capacity. So you'll see when Jack walks you through resiliency, for example, we've seen comprehensive plans that try to do a resiliency chapter, but it's really tough to talk about resiliency and not talk about resiliency in economic development, resiliency in housing, resiliency in transportation. So in this document, we've threaded that element throughout the chapters in the form of key call-outs. Priority investment, that pops up particularly in your implementation chapter. How are we going to fund this? What are the funding resources and mechanisms and levers that are out there? And then in this particular plan, we do have a cultural resources chapter. So all that is to say, this plan does cover all the required state statutes and include all the required elements that your state has outlined for a comprehensive plan. So again, we've seen this chevron stack here a couple times. I'm happy to say that we've worked through 1 through 5, and we're sitting comfortably here in section 6, draft and final comprehensive plan. Again, if we were to sort of condense all those steps and sub-steps that we've worked through, we did establish where we are today in that existing conditions memorandum. We worked through where we want to go with all of you, the vision, the actionable goals, and we incorporated this group's feedback. And now we're finally in the first public draft of the roadmap to get there. So I am excited to talk about this with you all, and Jack is going to walk us through at a high level some of the chapters and some of the big ideas in each chapter. I'll turn it over to Jack.
So as Josh said, I'm Jack. I've been working on the project since the beginning. We're just going to do a pretty high-level overview of the plan. I'm not going to go through every page of the document, but want to give you a general orientation of kind of how this plan is organized. So there's 11 different chapters here, introduction through priority investment and implementation. And we'll get started here. So the introduction chapter, this basically introduces the reader to the plan. What is a comprehensive plan? What was the planning process? What was some of the community engagement that happened throughout throughout the process, and then an overview of the past plans and studies. We wanted to highlight this spread here. So you'll see on the left, that's the plan key topics. So as Josh mentioned, that sustainability and resiliency piece, you'll see in these green callouts at the beginning of each of the chapters of the plan. And so it will basically relate whatever the chapter is talking about to those themes. And then the orange call out there is the town and gown. It's a critical piece of this plan. How does the university-city relationship work? And so we talk about that in the beginning of each of the chapters there. Second chapter gets at community profile. So this is a lot of the existing conditions work that we did, talking about the demographics, population. Again, this is one of the requirements of the statutes, and so that's why we go over it again here.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go
Do you
ahead.
want us to just ask you questions as we go through chapters, or just, you're gonna go through first and then ask questions later? And just
I can
pretend-
stop at the end of each chapter and we can do questions, if that's okay.
Okay,
Any questions for the first chapter?
yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so all the past plans and studies.
Yep.
Someone commented this week and referenced in the downtown corridor plan. And I think so often we spend all this money and all this time doing plans and plans and plans. So I know the new plan references the old, but are there things out of the old plans that were sacred and carried forward? I'm asking that philosophically for Clemson, the city of, or y'all, or we just kind of say, well, we read those old ones and we like, because sometimes old plans do say, we are going to do this, and then we lose those things for the next plan. Maybe, I don't know. So that's, my general question is, how do the past plans inform the current plan? There are specific things that were totally considered. This must be carried forward. This was a sacred thing that was established, X years ago.
Yeah, I think you'll see the comprehensive plan echoes a lot of the policies that were established in some of these previous plans. There are some instances where specific recommendations have been carried forward. And then there are references in the comprehensive plan to like the implementation of these previous plans. So it'll say something to the effect of, continue to implement the bike plan, for example, things like that. And so we're not necessarily pulling stuff out of that bike plan to be specific. We're just referencing it in general to say this comprehensive plan fits in line with those previous efforts.
Sometimes, if you look at the page of past plans that we were tasked with reviewing and incorporating as part of this process, on page 13, sometimes we'll kick off a project with a community and we'll look, is it on page 13 in your document?
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes you'll look at this page in another community's plan and they're all like 10, 15, 20 years old, and then a lot of times there's not much to carry forward, but Clemson has been on top of things. You have plans that have been adopted in the last couple of years. So a lot of that is still very relevant, not fully implemented yet because they're fresh, and the comprehensive plan can carry a lot of that forward. We don't have to reinvent the wheel for the bikeways map, for example, because that's established in that plan from 2022. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yep.
Can I get in the weeds question, or do you want just high level questions?
If it's like maybe Scribner errors, maybe we could wait. But if it's a more general question, then yeah.
Well, I have a question, and everybody knows that I'm just an average bear in the woods, but what is mitigating heat island effects?
I'd say that.
What page is that on?
It is on page 12.
We should all learn this right now.
Yeah, so that's probably one of these planning terms that should probably be defined in line. We do try to do that, so we'll make a note of that. But mitigating heat island, that's when there's a lot of pavement in one place, blacktop specifically, and it,
Makes sense now.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
but
I had no clue that that's what that, and if I'm an average bear, doubt
Yeah.
many other people will know that either.
we do try not, that's a fair point though, because we try to, one of our approaches, I think you'll see hopefully in this document, is that should be written in plain English so that anybody can pick it up and understand it. We try to define things in line and near where we're talking about it rather than have a glossary. We don't want it to feel like you're picking up a textbook and you have to like flip back and forth to an index or anything like that. Like, you should be able to understand what you're looking at. So we can make a note of that and make sure that we have a strong preference in our office for avoiding planning jargon, and so we don't want to do that. So that's a fair point.
It sounds better than concrete jungle.
That's
You
the
know,
same
I mean,
concrete
it's the
jungle.
same-
Yeah.
And one other thing on that same page, it says something about restoring Rock Creek. Is that Rock Creek, or some other Rock Creek? The Rock Creek that goes behind my house, Rock Creek, or is this another kind of Rock Creek?
I think that would be your rock. That's the actual Rock Creek.
Okay.
These are things that we heard in outreach, though. So this page 12 isn't recommendations yet. Things that people brought up in outreach.
Okay, when I saw that, I wasn't sure that it was, I think it dealt with floodplains and natural resource, that type of thing. I just wanted to make sure it was Rock Creek, as locals know Rock Creek. Okay.
Yes, I believe so,
Thanks.
yeah.
Thank you.
And then just to that heat island effect on page, I think it's 115, there's a whole little section on heat island effect that defines it there, in that natural areas chapter. So it's page 115, it's towards the end of it.
Oh, 115.
We'll get there, but I just wanted to point that out for you. Okay. So we were here in chapter 2. I guess any other questions on the first one? No? All right, let's keep moving on here. Okay, so chapter 2 is again community profile. This is kind of based on the existing conditions. We look again at the market and demo here. I think some things to note: the population is increasing. Obviously, you all know that. There's also some aging trends. That's not unique to Clemson. That's something we're seeing across the country, but wanted to point that out here. And then I think something interesting, sort of unique to Clemson, is the mix of housing availability, so mix of housing types. There's a pretty diverse range here, but with that, about 2/3 of that product is rental occupied. So that's something unique to Clemson. Obviously has to do with the large student population, but an interesting housing trend for the city. Any questions on 2 before we get into 3? Yeah.
The occupied or vacant housing units, or picking, is that accurate? The number, because it doesn't equal 100%.
I think it's a typo.
Is it a typo?
It may have been a typo. That's from the ACS. We can double check that
Yeah,
though.
no, I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
it's not accurate.
No,
Yeah, we
it's a
can check.
typo because the thing up there says Pickens County is 68%. So
Right.
your vacant has to be 68 minus
Right,
100.
instead of 88.
Yeah, we can double check. That could just be a typo there. Good catch. Thank you.
But my other question, when you're talking about poverty,
Mm-hmm.
here you talk that it may be attributed to the number of students that are enjoying it. And I wanted to know if that's based on fact or assumption, because I think it's important. Some of the residents who do live here, that would be considered probably in the poverty or low income, some of those individuals actually work at the university and other locations, but in those positions that it's hard to make a living wage.
Mhm.
So I don't necessarily know if that's accurately stated. So
Yeah.
how do you determine that data? That's what my question is. How do you?
Yeah, so that comes from census as well. I think how we phrase it is it can at least be in part be attributed to the number of students without employment. It's a bit of a tricky number because of how they do the census and how students report their income. So someone might be, working part-time or very minimally, and that'll affect how the city kind of reports that number. Do you want to say anything else on that, Josh?
We can take a look at, we can double check these numbers and just make sure, get back to you with an answer too.
Yeah, because I don't, if it is accurate, I'm a little based off since the information that comes from, sometimes it's, but I don't know how much of a deeper dive that you do to just make sure it's accurate.
I promise I'm not gonna ask a question every chapter, but this snapshot's really tough because you're combining students and homeowners. So I would suggest, like I think it says, the median age of 24 years. That definitely counts students because it's out of the Census Bureau. But the average income, I don't think counts students. So I would suggest this section have a profile of all citizens and a profile of homeowners. Because the homeowner's income, average income, there's no way if you include students, our average income is $50,000. But I think you could definitely make, and that kind of makes the point that this is a very unique population here, that, as you said, a huge portion of it is our students, and you're counting them as some of this. But when it's not counted, when it's homeowners or full-time citizens, to make some different numbers in the snapshot, if that would work, if we could have an offline about it, but that might help us describe the community better.
I don't know that there would be a way to slice and dice
Yeah.
census data for
Yeah, exactly.
just
You can't do
homeowner
that.
income. But
I
also,
do know that the federal guidelines for affordable housing in Clemson skews the number because of the students, because the income is incorporated into the federal housing guidelines for federal affordable housing. You can look at the scales, and they tell you flat out that that is skewed based off of that. So the student's income is incorporated in some of the government figures.
And it's incorporated with that, Windsor, through the poverty rate being so high. Ms. Felicia, Ms. Smith just said.
Or maybe the way to do it is just have a profile of homeowners too in here.
this number though, I just want
You're right, 'cause how do you?
the 50,000 is median income though, not average income. Just want to point that out. So.
And I also have a question.
Yep.
Do you want me to get in the weeds about the map of land use? Or,
Oh, the existing land use map,
yeah, number 21.
21. If you have, general comments, yeah, go ahead.
The green on Clarendon Drive, on both sides, that is not open space, that is agricultural. And I want it designated as that, please.
So this is occupied versus vacant.
I can do the outline of the parcel.
Yeah, Nathan, I mentioned it to Nathan, so that's
This
what
is
he's.
owner occupied, renter occupied.
Okay.
So they're talking about here in your 60.
Anything else for chapter 2 before we move on to vision goals, chapter 3? Right, keep going here. Okay, so chapter 3, this is vision goals. So last time we were out here, we presented the vision goals to this group. So I think you all have seen these before. I think one of the things we heard was maybe having part of the vision statement condensed, a short version, so we could just see it up front. It's easy to see and kind of encapsulates what this vision is talking about, so we incorporated that here. And then you see the goals there on the right. The only thing that changed about the goals is we did add a town and gown and then sustainability and resiliency. There's a goal added for each one of those, just to keep consistent with the chapter structure, make sure it makes sense to the reader. Any issues there with, or questions, chapter 3, vision goals?
I have wordsmithing, but we can wait.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So now we'll get into 4. This is land use and development. So this is kind of the meat of the comprehensive plan. This is where your land use plan is. And this sets up a lot of the recommendations later in the document. So this plan, this spread here, this page that we're looking at, this format will be repeated throughout the rest of the plan. This is the goals and key recommendations, and that blue call out on the right moves to the town and gown in the orange, and then sustainability and resiliency in the green. And so again, each of those talk about land use and development, that relationship between the university and the city, and then how land use and development is affected by sustainability and resiliency. So in this chapter, we basically kind of set up the land use plan, starting with development constraints and considerations. What are all the things that went into establishing this future land use plan? So there is some interesting, unique features to Clemson that went into that. We get into the growth and annexation framework. So this is basically just a map that provides the city, some higher level kind of direction on how it should grow. And so we broke out those categories into development intensification, infill, redevelopment, growth areas, both primary and secondary. And then we have the 9 future land use categories. So again, you all have seen these definitions before, but again, explained here easily for the reader to understand. And then you'll see that future land use map there. So again, nothing too much has changed, I think, since the last time you've seen it. And we've updated it a little bit to reflect some of the current developments coming online, but for the most part, this should be something you've seen before. And then, so big ideas here, land use and development. I'll talk about big ideas with each of the chapters, just to kind of make it more distilled. So big things here are trying to incorporate those previous plans. So to your point earlier, making sure we're incorporating the previous plans as we move forward. Prioritizing development in key areas, focusing on infill of vacant and underutilized parcels before expanding, not overextending ourselves into areas yet. Making sure we're coordinating with the adjacent communities to manage that growth, and then allowing for more diverse uses in some key areas. And we'll talk about what that means here in the next chapter. Any questions on chapter 4 before we move on to housing and neighborhoods?
The orange areas that are primary targets for being annexed, is that new targets, or has that always been something we thought about?
So a combination, I suppose. These are recommendations from us. We worked with city staff a little bit on these to figure out some of these areas. But it's not necessarily for annexation directly, it's just how the city wants to grow. So this isn't like, hey, you need to go annex this tomorrow. It's, what's the general idea of how the city should grow over the length of this plan. Any other questions here? I know we are moving fast. I just want to respect everybody's time.
I have something just in case some of our neighboring jurisdictions are watching this presentation or look at this. I need to get with you about utility service areas. That will impact that.
Yeah. Okay, so chapter 5 is housing and neighborhoods. So in this chapter, we're really talking about the existing neighborhoods, housing availability, and then this chapter ends with a residential framework. So we'll see these frameworks in the housing and neighborhoods chapter and then the economic development chapters. They just basically provide more specific recommendations for certain areas of the city. Again, it's the splash page here with the goals, key recommendations, and then the relationship between housing and neighborhoods, town and gown, and sustainability and resiliency. We talk about housing availability, differences between attainable and affordable housing. Throughout the plan, you'll see these blue, kind of dark blue callouts on some of the pages. These are callouts related to the content on that page. It doesn't necessarily contain recommendations, but it's just some context for what we're talking about here. We talk about student housing. The city does a good job of kind of regulating rentals and developments, and so we talk about some of the current processes that the city uses. And then we also provide a case study here on the right, so it's a New Brunswick zoning overlay. Again, just some context, things to consider, but not recommendations. Then the residential framework here, you'll see, again, as I said from the beginning, it basically takes certain areas of the city, the residential areas, provides some more specific guidelines, some recommendations related to the topics that we introduced in the beginning of the chapter. And so we talk about, residential reinvestment, where are the stable neighborhoods that we want to preserve, and then you'll see on the map here there's a hatched polygons. Those are the student housing prioritization areas. We want to make sure that we're sort of trying to corral student housing into certain areas of the city so it doesn't disrupt the existing neighborhoods, the existing character of some of the Clemson neighborhoods. And so what you'll see on the map here is areas that have student housing already, and then maybe some areas that could accommodate it in the future. So big ideas here, looking to build some more attainable housing. Where that goes, you can see in the residential frameworks. Preserve and reinvest the established residential neighborhoods. This is, definitely a pride point of the city of Clemson. There are some great neighborhoods, some great residential areas, so how to make sure those are preserved. Continue to regulate the rental units, the student housing developments, and make sure it's located in appropriate areas. So those are kind of the big ideas there for housing neighborhoods. Any questions, comments on this chapter?
DARA master plan.
55.
I apologize. What is that?
It's right there, close to Dawson Park, or across the street from Dawson Park.
You know what I'm talking about, over 280 acres.
What are we talking about?
You've only been talking about 100 years.
Seems like it's been in the works for over 10
Well,
years.
I'm just being smart.
I'm like, huh? Why didn't y'all just call it that?
Okay, thank you, my new colleagues. Exactly, okay.
Just change that.
It was, yeah, Patrick Milliken.
All right. Well, to the point about it being accessible to everybody who reads it, if people don't recognize that term.
Just
Yeah, I can it'd probably be helpful to have some kind of location or some way of making sure people know exactly what we're talking about.
okay for Cadera specifically is what you're saying.
Well, some of them, because people don't automatically assume you know what we're
Somebody's shaming. It's just been a conversation that's been ongoing.
I think the map should reference it, so you should see it. It's that purple polygon on the framework map in the next page. Try to call it up.
Councilmember Palmer, since it's been talked about for 100 years, is there a chance it's going to be talked about for another 100 years? Or is this something that's really?
I'll let Nathan handle it.
Don't give me that look, man.
I didn't give any look. I'm just sitting here.
Huh? 6 months, okay.
Yeah.
I've just never heard of it living here.
I mean, we've been waiting for them to come
We
forward.
met
I've
with
heard
them.
of Packlet Milliken, but not.
Yeah, they just renamed it. They renamed it. They did that on their own.
Are you kidding me?
But I mean, it's been an ongoing thing, and we've been waiting on them to come forward, and.
Well, Packlet Milliken, everybody knows in this area. Okay.
They
All right,
They
that's.
just named their development
This is just plain.
specific names, but, I mean, we met with them probably a month ago, and they are securing a builder and kind
Maybe
of,
put it in print,
They've
yeah,
been
just
securing them.
once.
We've had that meeting before.
yeah, many times.
What was the potential number of houses in
Just
there?
put, like you said, put on
Sixty.
formally Packlet.
Formerly Packlet Milliken,
Formerly
everybody will know.
Like 1,500.
Okay.
What is it, 1,500? Yeah, it's big.
Hasn't gone before.
Huge, it's there.
It's already been approved. You just-
It's been done for a while.
But why?
Over 10 years, like Jones said.
All right, any other comments on housing and neighborhoods?
Sorry.
Was that all?
That's all right.
Yeah, that's all.
I have a question. Just so we know, student housing transfers are not required to live on. It's only freshmen, new students.
That's in there.
No,
This is
it
fresh.
says transfer.
Oh, does it say transfer as well? Because I saw,
It says freshman and transfer.
but page,
49. It's only freshmen who are required to live on.
What page was it?
49.
Sorry, and I didn't quite catch the question.
It's only freshmen who are required, the first year freshmen,
not transfer,
not transfer. Transfer students are not required to live on campus.
just freshmen.
First year.
Okay.
They're the only ones required to live on.
I mean, I think in general, those of y'all who know this so well, you gotta be really open to everybody else who, you have to orient people to things like, okay, where is Betty? I've lived here forever. No, I will not be shamed. I mean, just for other, like this, the community conversation tonight. You can't just spit out a term and think everybody knows what you're talking about.
That's true.
And
Part of the idea of this is that we actually follow this. The comp plans before haven't been so followed because they were Byzantine in the land use regs with 170 items or something in there. Am I wrong, Nathan?
No, yeah, I was just laughing at your Byzantine time, that's good.
Yeah. You know, so, this is supposed, like you said, it's supposed to be accessible to everybody, so we actually follow it.
Right.
My
It was
only-
intended to be like this, though. It was intended to be exactly like this.
I worked on some of the old ones, and they were tough to
Ms.
understand.
Smith needs it. Yeah, Ms. Bush.
Well, the only other question I had is, I think the current zoning for the area by Vista is actually, more of a mixed use, not high density. Is that correct?
Which one?
Over by Vista. Up here at the, on page 57.
This could run.
57.
Yeah, it's right now, the framework, we would turn it into high density residential, correct?
I
Is
think
that the
that's-
recommendation?
That's low density residential.
Right now it is, but I'm just saying, is there, I'm talking about the surrounding area. Could that be something that we look at more of a mixed use?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Instead of student housing there, you're saying it'd be mixed use with commercial. Okay, I got you.
More for non-students, but more of a balance, but is that something that could be considered? I'm just wondering why
Yeah.
we chose that as.
Yeah, we can take a look at that and work with staff on that designation.
That was the only other question.
Because truthfully, if you take Cambridge over to West, that area there is really not student, particularly right there on Cambridge.
Right.
Or not Cambridge, but West.
Yeah, there's a student housing down over the bridge there, but you've got, other alternative housing in there. You've got AT&T, you've got industrial in there.
Right, yeah.
I think the bigger portion that's Aspen Heights, which is all student housing.
All student house, that's the only really one.
Yeah, the one down in the
Right
hole,
down the
kind of
hole,
butts up against
right.
Cadillac Heights.
But the rest of it, I'm thinking, could that not be more?
Right.
Yeah.
That probably get better defined.
Yep, we can look at that area. Okay, anything else for housing neighborhoods? Good. All right. Let's move on here to chapter 6. So this is economic development chapter. So this chapter gets at business diversification, strengthening some of those major commercial corridors. How does Clemson fit within the surrounding region? Its location and influence, and then this chapter also ends with the economic development framework. So we talk about, promoting more diverse businesses, expanding some employment sectors, what that could look like, research and technology, healthcare, accommodation, food service. Obviously, the education sector is, huge here. That's one of the major employers. Looking at those 4 major commercial corridors, how do we strengthen those areas? And you'll see in the economic development framework here, we kind of pull out those specific areas and provide more specific recommendations for them here. Some of the big ideas in this chapter are, how do we attract a variety of businesses? Office development, keep graduates in the community once they're done at the university, supporting local businesses, more diverse businesses, expanding some of those key industries. And then how do you take advantage of the city's unique identity to promote tourism, activate some of those areas, bringing in tourists to downtown, to other key commercial corridors in the city, and then strengthening those areas, Route 123, College, 76, 93, some of those commercial areas. Any questions for this chapter? All right, so chapter 7, this is transportation and mobility. In this chapter, we're talking about the roadway networks, managing traffic, active transportation network, and some of the transit options here. This one is a big one for town and gown, so that relationship between the university and the city. Talking about Cat Bus and Tiger Transit, there's been some, I think, complications in the past, and so really emphasizing that collaboration. Transportation is not just part of the university or part of the city, it's a whole network, and so how do you make sure to connect those two together to make it more coherent and efficient for its users? We talk about the roadway. Go ahead.
Is that something we really,
I need to talk a little about that. Yeah, okay. There's some, that has influenced off past plans and the situation
Yep.
10 years ago, and it's no longer that way. We kind of reinvented that way. It's far more robust and is working pretty well.
Great.
But I've got other thoughts for you too.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Yeah, we can update that for sure. Okay, so looking at some roadway improvements, introducing the idea of complete streets, what that means for the community. It's not, that a bike lane needs to go on every single street, but if a roadway improvement happens, considering the possibility of what that could look like, making it more pedestrian-friendly, cyclist-friendly, and then car-friendly as well. Looking at traffic management strategies, curb cuts and access management, how people move on some of these key corridors, making sure there's efficiencies built in, promoting cross-access, reducing curb cuts, things like that. And then I think downtown parking is a big one, making sure that people can come downtown, enjoy downtown, have a place to park, but also making sure that you balance that number of parking spaces to make sure it's still walkable and enjoyable for pedestrians.
the picture on 83 needs to be changed.
I'm sorry?
The picture on 83, because it's got the reservation, reserved for gun parking, that's no longer the case. That's minutia, but still, it's not accurate.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
What?
Yeah, that's a good catch.
Yeah.
That's outdated.
Good catch there.
While we're talking about pictures real quickly, there's a couple that are redundant. If possible, it'd be great to have every picture unique.
Yeah.
So you'll notice there, when I went through this, there's some redundancy on some of the, especially if you're looking at downtown, but it's more than just downtown, Patrick Square and other places throughout the city.
Yep.
But yeah, you'll notice what I'm talking about.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Can more, we've been
Yeah.
seeing more.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you guys have some great pictures so far. Not all communities have this good of pictures, so we appreciate
Does the
it.
downtown parking include what we're also include as uptown parking?
You mean the recommendations here?
I think the first one there is, comprehensive parking evaluation.
I think what we're specific to downtown, but it could include uptown as well. We can adjust that language.
Probably most of the recommendations, I would imagine, could be applied to Uptown as well. We could take a look at that. I think Uptown is probably, feels a little less, like, it's probably a little easier to just drive there and park than it is in downtown currently, but we could take a look.
I was just.
That may be-
20 years out or 10 years out.
Yeah, that, it also could be a recommendation here, which would be like, long-term, start considering parking in Uptown as well, if it continues to develop and change over time. Get ahead of it a little bit.
Okay, so here we're getting into that active mobility piece. So building off the bikeways plan, building off some of the recommendations from the Green Crescent Trail plans, and so talking about the different types of bike infrastructure that the city has. So we just provide some graphics there to give the reader an idea of what we're talking about. Then you'll see the map there as existing and proposed bikeways throughout the city. And then this spread here talks about, again, that transit piece. And then we show on the right there, we did an analysis from the existing cat bus stops and showed the walk time. You can see in the kind of darker yellow there, that's the 10-minute walk shed, and then outside of that, that's the lighter yellow that's outside of a 10-minute walk shed. So some good analysis there just to show maybe where potential future stops or stops could go.
Just not to jump in here, Jack, but just one point. This is one of those good examples of incorporating your past plans because your bike plan is pretty recent. It also uses NACTO standards in its terms for bikeways and types of bikeways, protected bikeways, shared lane markings. So this is a good example of like a really high quality plan that you have on the books that the comprehensive plan carries forward and reflects. One of those things that Jack mentioned earlier on.
And then, so wrapping this chapter up, some of the big ideas here, considering complete streets, what that means for the city, promoting some better access management along commercial corridors, considering a parking analysis we could do downtown and downtown there, continuing to implement the bikeways plan, integrating that with the Green Crescent Trail study, and then continuing to strengthen that partnership between the city and the university in terms of transit, as you mentioned there. Any questions with transportation and mobility? All right, so moving on to community facilities, services, and infrastructure. This is a big chapter in terms of collaboration. A lot of these things the city can't do on its own, and so this chapter really tries to emphasize that collaborative piece. We mapped all the community facilities within the city. Shown here. Get into some discussion on the services, provide some recommendations there. I think curbside recycling was something that we heard a lot, so wanted to address it here in the plan. Talking about some infrastructure needs. This case study here is from the University of Illinois and its relationship with Urbana-Champaign, the city. And so looking at what it means to have a more collaborative process to make broadband kind of accessible to those in the community. Big ideas in this chapter, continue to plan for additional staffing for some of those key services, working with school administrators, making sure that their plans kind of align with the growth plans of the city. Consider, that recycling piece, and then, like that case study mentioned, establishing partnerships with the university to look at broadband more broadly. Any questions here on the community facilities, services, and infrastructure chapter? Okay, so chapter 9 here, this is natural resources and open space. This, as Josh mentioned at the beginning, this is one of the elements required for the state statutes. So we have a chapter dedicated to it here. This is a big part of Clemson. Obviously, there's a lot of great assets that the city has. Lake Hartwell is a huge one. And so we wanted to really capture that in this chapter. We did a parks and service area analysis. You'll see that's the map on, it's at page 111 there. This is a cool map. It shows the residential service area. So it's the residential areas that are within 10-minute walk of a park. So that's shown in the orange there. And then the kind of yellowish color, we're calling underserved areas, but it's really areas that aren't within that 10-minute walk of a park. So this is a good map to kind of guide future park planning in the city. You'll note that number 3 up there is one Clemson that was recently added, and this analysis was done before we knew that the acreage of that park, so that's not considered there, just as a note.
Is number 9, which is the Clemson Park and Community Garden, and then you show within a 10-minute walk service area, that doesn't look accurate. Then you got underserved areas backing right up against that park.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. We can check the analysis again.
One of the things that this network analysis does is it actually takes into account entry points into the parks itself. So that's different than just drawing a circle around a park and saying, you know, you can walk there. So what we can double check, what I might guess is happening is that those neighbors might back right up against that park, but they might actually have no access to the park.
There's no neighbors that back up against the park.
Yeah, so
There are none.
there's no actual access from those neighborhoods
Well,
to
Clinton
that
Hall
park.
backs up at parks, those kids
Oh,
come.
that's true. It parks, but the, right there at the other side of the park, there's not set for
But those
the
kids
horses.
can come off of Berkeley and all that, I can't imagine.
Well, I'm underserved. I'm in the yellow.
I know you are, but I guess I'm taking exception to that, because that park's right backs up to your property.
But I guess technically there's
Climb
not,
the fence.
There's not an entry technically.
I know. I just.
We had this in,
I do every day.
Yeah, you can't walk
you have
from
to
Al's
walk a
house
mile
to.
all the way up.
I got it.
we did have this in one community one time where it was a similar situation, and they were like, well, we're not underserved. Everybody in our neighborhood walks out their backyard, which had no fences, you know, it was a neighborhood. And we just walked through the back of the baseball fields to get to the park. And we were like, okay, so we just fudged the analysis because of what people actually do. So if that were a situation, we could talk about it.
Just look at that a little bit, okay? I question, particularly considering what we're spending there now.
Overall, that's really pretty impressive that that much of the community is.
Plus, right to a park.
It's really nice.
Right.
And I just made a note with Key here too. We might change underserved to outside of 10-minute walk. That's not to say, yeah.
That might be better. Yeah.
But what you would consider maybe in those light yellow areas is over time, that's maybe, let's say there is an opportunity to purchase a house that falls into disrepair or something. Maybe the city considers that for a pocket park and makes that purchase, for example, as one potential example. Just because then that could create a new 10-minute walk shed bubble around that new pocket park. It's hard to do new parks in established areas otherwise.
Okay, moving on here. We have a specific section about Lake Hartwell, that lake access. Again, a huge asset for the city. We provide some recommendations about maybe turning some commercial developments to face the lake, having more interaction with the lake, just to make it more, more friendly, attract tourists, make them interface with that lake a little bit more when they're shopping time, things like that. Big ideas here for natural resources and open space. So continue to implement Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Again, that goes to Josh's example of a recent plan that's doing what it's supposed to do, so the comprehensive plan builds on that. Continuing to encourage new developments to have parks and open spaces, something the city does, but continuing to do that. And then promoting Lake Hartwell as a community resource, something that everyone in the community could use, as well as tourists, visitors coming to the city of Clemson. Any questions here with natural resources and open space? Okay. All right, so our final kind of core chapter here is cultural resources. Again, this is one of the required elements in state statutes, and so we have a chapter here. Gets into some of the community history, tourism, placemaking, and then events and festivals. Talk about the cultural and historic resources, have it on a map here. I think this map does a good job of illustrating that the cultural and historic resources span, outside of the city limits into the university, and so there's that relationship there between the two. Although the two are distinct from a cultural and historic resources perspective, there's some blending there. So just acknowledging that. And then we have a section here on downtown Clemson. This is a great asset for the community. It's definitely a highlight. It's something unique to Clemson. It's a really interesting downtown, and so how do you offer engaging activities for people other than students, you know, so parents, people coming to visit the community. How do you get them into downtown, spend time, spend money in downtown, and come away with that positive experience? And then we wanted to call out placemaking. The city does a lot with the public art program, and so there's a lot of great murals, a lot of good placemaking that's already happening, and so we just wanted to build on that.
One thing on page
Yep.
130,
Yep.
that picture needs to be substituted because they show us the Shepherd Hotel under construction when it's complete.
Yep.
So that turn that into something nicer than it looks right there.
Listen at Mr. Equal.
On page 125, you've got the sheep farm listed as a cultural resource. That's been converted, it's just really a student center now. It's not really a cultural resource anymore.
What was it again?
The Clemson College sheep barn, it's not, I would take it off. It's not a resource anybody can rent or go into.
It's a historic landmark though, right?
It might be a landmark.
I think it's on
The sheep barn?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's a historical landmark.
Yeah.
Windsor, yeah.
It's not marked as a landmark anymore. It's been totally restored into a
Ride by it every day and check it out.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, it has been in this office buildings,
Yeah,
office space, but I still think there's a plaque there
there's historic value.
that used to be the old sheep barn. I still call it the old sheep barn.
Yeah.
I'm talking about on campus,
Yeah.
Yeah,
right there off of Cherry Road.
Yeah.
yeah, the one right there near Hendricks.
Oh, it's definitely a unique looking building, but it's
Yeah, I
not.
don't know if has it been declared historical?
I think it has a
Usually for a
national.
national historic landmark, somebody at some point submitted an
I know,
application.
that's what I'm saying, I don't necessarily know.
So this list is National Historic Landmarks. Now, if it, and I'm not as familiar with this particular building, if it's been modified beyond its historic value, somebody could tell the National Park Service to
But
take it off.
It still has a
it's still called the sheep, I mean, it still has the sheep barn name or stuff, a plaque or something there,
the
right?
Like the J.C. Sterling barn, that's septic, that's private property.
That's a different one.
Well, I'm talking about a different one, but that's private property, you can't go down there. It may be cited, but
Yeah, you have
Yeah,
to
this is
reserve
more-
this. You can't just go in, you got this student space, but you gotta reserve it.
This is more acknowledging that they're in the community and they've been landmarked at the national level. The funny thing about national, I get a little bit into this stuff, but national landmarking actually has less protection than local landmarking. So the city can, if it has a historic preservation commission, can protect a local landmark, and then it can actually protect the external facade and the way the building looks, and can put some restrictions on how the building can be rehabbed. National landmarks, if somebody does it, it just comes off the national landmark list. There's no teeth.
I think sure, it might be a landmark, but it's not a resource for citizens that can't use it. So that's maybe that's an unnecessary distinction, but it's not really, struggling is on private property, it's the same way. It's a landmark, no one can.
you can talk to them and rent it, but if it's private property, you can go to it down there.
I guess that's a small thing.
Yeah, that's good.
And you got 2 R's in resources.
Yeah, just circle that as well. Some things sneak through. That's why we're here.
That's right. Okay, so big ideas here with that cultural resources chapter. So partnering with stakeholders to preserve and celebrate some of the community's cultural and historical resources, promoting tourism, experiential retail in downtown, how to draw people downtown, keep people downtown, outside of just students, and then enhancing that place-making efforts, art installations, improving gateways and wayfinding, just making the city have that identity, have that brand. And then the final chapter here, so this is the priority investment and implementation chapter, so this is chapter 11. This is, again, part of the state statutes, but it's something that we have in every one of our plans. This is kind of the how-to guide to implement the plan. What this chapter gets at is the use of the comprehensive plan, how to go about taking these recommendations, making them actionable. It identifies some of the funding sources, which is required by the state statute, and so we have those listed out here by topic. It talks about the partnerships, what those partnerships look like, identifies some of those partners, and then gets into what do you do coming out of this plan. You need to update zoning regulations, continually come back to this document, make sure it's current, make sure it's updated. And then the last piece of this chapter is the action matrix. So it's hasn't been completed yet. Once we have a finalized list of recommendations, we'll basically take out the ones that are actionable, something that the city can actually do, or maybe a partner can do, assign it priority level, timeline estimates, and then identify those partners. And that'll be basically like a list that the city can use to check off as it moves forward and starts implementing this plan. Anything you want to add to that, Josh? It's a big one.
Just that's that's one of the, you may be somebody who reads this cover to cover. This committee, of course, has been more plugged in, but that's almost like for, the cliff notes of the plan. For somebody who's picks this up, they're a new council member or a new planning commissioner, and they're like, what do I need to know about this plan? They could take a look at the vision, the goals, the future land use map, and then they can flip to the index, and it'll allow you to get your head around this document very quickly and get up to speed on where the city was in 2025 when it adopted this. And it also will act as, when the city updates its CIP or takes a look at how it wants to do the short-term budgeting year after year, that can help inform some of those things. Where are we on our comprehensive plan? What did we do over the past couple of years? Based on our comp plan, what are we maybe going to prioritize over the next couple of years? So it's a handy guide to the plan at the end of your document.
How many pages will it be?
What's that?
It just depends on the number of actions.
We had talked about having like a fold out, like almost an executive summary kind of situation. Is that kind of what this serves as?
We have an executive summary scoped that's separate from this. This is just that matrix piece.
Yeah, this will probably be 7 or 8 pages, and it'll be in a nice, clear, easy to follow table. We are scoped to do a story map executive summary. That'll be an online ArcGIS online summary, where we'll do sort of a condensed, almost like what Jack just did, a big idea summary of each chapter. The maps will be interactive, so people can zoom in and actually get a little closer into the maps than you could in the PDF. And then we'll typically have a button if you want to read the full chapter, click here. So it's like a very concise web and phone friendly version of the comprehensive plan. And we will work with staff to build that on the city's ArcGIS online portal so that it stays with the city forever, and if updates happen to the plan, you can also update that story map.
So much work.
Any other questions before Josh goes into next steps? Any other general questions about the document so far?
Just real quickly.
Yeah.
Just partnerships, I know you said we'll update this, but I'm just gonna go ahead and highlight a couple things real quickly. You put on here and Med Health. You also would have to list Prisma for both in the community. So if you list one, you're gonna list both. 10 at the top, Pickens County Municipal Association, and I can think of others, but Clemson Elementary, educational, like Southern Wesleyan, but that's in Central. You have to decide if you want to list that in Tri-County Tech. So, and then the last thing on page 12 before we go, I was just talking to Windsor here. Page 12, it says strategic plan. And if we're doing what I'm hearing, if you want people to relate, it should say Clemson Next. It should not say strategic plan, because people hear Clemson Next, but they don't hear, not saying, Clemson Next is a strategic plan, but please use Clemson Next. That's my suggestion.
And then 71 is Clemson Next, not Uptown Next, right?
Which one?
On page 71, Uptown Next is mentioned, that should be Clemson Next. think, I'm asking you.
Uptown is all incorporated in the Clemson Next Point.
Yeah, I would say that's probably,
There's no thing called Uptown Next.
still recall that.
I'm just learning.
Well, to the mayor's point there as well, we went through a lot fast and we focused on some of the big ideas. I'd say take the next 2 weeks with this document and please get your comments over to the staff team. And I don't want you to think that this is the only time you can get feedback to us. That's what your role is as part of this committee. So if you have additional feedback, additional errors you find, additional partners, please send those over to staff. Even in this conversation tonight, we probably jotted down 100 things here while we all were talking. So that's absolutely how this plan is going to be Clemson, and that's our main goal. So it's really valuable if you continue to go through it and you get your feedback over to staff. They'll get it to us and we will take care of it. So do appreciate this type of conversation. I'll just do this from down here. Open house is immediately following at 7 o'clock tonight. We'll be sharing some boards and we'll have some copies that will stay in the room, but the public can leaf through. I guess to that point, we've also had this draft up on the website for a couple weeks. We haven't received any public comment yet, but we do have the online equivalent of the basic comment box. It's just a one-question survey where you can submit your page number and your comment, and then as soon as you submit, another one pops up. So it's supposed to be very simple. It's the same as dropping an index card in a bowl at the open house, and it's that by design. And then following the open house tonight and getting all of your comments incorporated, getting any comments that we receive through the open house, vetted through the staff process, and then incorporated if appropriate. We'll get into the adoption process, which will be Planning Commission and City Council, public hearing and adoption. So I do believe this is the final meeting of this group, and it's been great to see consistent faces throughout. I know some new plugged in partway through, but to have that consistency and these good conversations every step of the way with you all has been part of what I think has made this a document that I know we're really proud of, and I think that the city hopefully can be proud of and can even more importantly use to get things done. So do appreciate your work on this project. And I guess last thing I'll say is I hope you all stick around for the open house if you can. That'd be great to hear what the rest of the general public and your fellow Clemson residents have to say about what they're seeing as well. So thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Sarah, just for this report.
Yeah, okay, cool, okay.
If you don't work that way, then we can work.
It's just me, you know.
Thank you, thanks for your comments.
Thank you.